Happy Friday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, bringing you into this final weekend of June. Tomorrow, I'm heading down to Kansas City to see Shohei Ohtani pitch on Saturday.
That'll be fun. I'm serious.
Shohei Ohtani at Kauffman Stadium.
I'm just going to live vicariously through you while I'm writing my column and you're watching the Dodgers. I am full of admiration. Now, give me some food. Like, what are you guys doing for food at the stadium? Is there some kind of pizza plan?
Joe's Barbecue has a stand there. So, like,
I thought you mentioned something about pizza.
Well, the seats that we have come with a pizza, like a smaller pizza.
I wonder how that is.
And we have a table that's like underneath like an overhang, so it's like shaded.
Yeah.
And that was I didn't want to be baked in it's a 3:00 game, so it could be pretty hot.
Are you down the left field line or the right field line?
We're on we're on the first base line.
First base line. Okay. Nice. So you'll be looking into the Dodgers dugout?
Yeah. And so we'll get down there. We're not staying overnight because we have swimming, but looking forward to get down to see the Dodgers in Kansas City.
Yeah. This qualifies as talking ball. The Dodgers first place.
Best record, tied for the best record in baseball. They have a 3-game lead over the Cubs and the Mets and the other teams that are, the National League's loaded. So,
God, you're going to have fuss good.
It's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah.
But we got a great show. And before we get into the show, we are brought to you by StayHome.Care. And look, we met with Chuck and Nina, the owners of StayHome.Care last week. They came up and visited with us, and just an unbelievable family and service they provide. They have over 100+ employees that work for them, and they do simple things like, you might have an uncle and aunt, a parent, a brother or sister that just needs some help, that doesn't need to go to like a full-time facility and needs somebody that can be with them 15, 20 hours a week. Could be to take them to get a haircut, to go grocery shopping, to get their nails done, just to provide that companionship, help them with cooking and cleaning, just some of the little things that they still need help with where they don't need to move out. They provide all that at StayHome.Care. Visit them at their website at StayHome.Care or call them at 402-205-2233. Thanks to StayHome.Care, the title sponsor here of Husker Online Headlines. But Sip, let's get into headline number 1. Ready or not, July 1 is here. What does that mean moving forward? Well, what does it mean now? Starting on July 1, the University of Nebraska can begin paying athletes directly. That's monumental. They will have $20.5 million that they can use in year 1 that can go towards both rev share payments or additional scholarships. And I caught up with one NU official this week to kind of get some more clarification on the additional scholarships. And it's going to be kind of a slow roll to raise that scholarship number. This year, Nebraska will fund 16 more scholarships than they were currently funding a year ago. That will jump to probably 36 in year 2. But the real confusing thing is if you fund additional scholarships with this rev share, it counts against your 20.5.
God, I've seen mixed reports on that. I'm just going to take your word for it.
That came directly from the University of Nebraska. They're hoping, though, after the first year that gets erased. But as of right now, in year 1 of rev share, additional scholarships that you choose to fund have to be deducted out of your 20.5. But moving forward,
after a year,
they hope that that's going to go away.
Yeah, that was my understanding. I was reading an ESPN article last night, and it said those payments, the rev share payments, will be in addition to scholarships and other benefits that the athletes already receive.
So what you already currently are paying, like this year's numbers, that doesn't count. So if you have 85, so like for football, they're going to stay at about 85 paid scholarships. But Matt Rule still might have 100+ players that are going to get paid. So they'll have to use rev share to pay some of those additional guys. And that's currently what's going on right now.
That's what they're doing. So it's not a huge change that way, right?
But, moving forward, if they take the lid off and say additional scholarship money won't count against rev share, you could fully fund 105.
Okay.
And baseball could go up from 11.7 to as many as 34.
But in Nebraska, according to your story in Tunnel Talk, 24 is the number. that Nebraska would go to 24 scholarships in baseball?
20, no. This year, I don't know what their total is going to be. Like they're going to fund, Nebraska is going to fund 16 total more scholarships this year for all their sports that they currently aren't funding.
Okay.
And that's going to be spread out over baseball, softball, wrestling, soccer, and track. We know wrestling is getting around 3 because Mark Manning told us that. So 3 of those 16 are going to go to wrestling.
Oh, this is what you wrote. Once things get to a point where added scholarships don't count against the rev share cap, I'm told Nebraska will have at least 25 scholarships committed to baseball.
And again, it's
now that's huge.
But SEC teams will go to 34.
Okay.
So like that's the battle for Will Bolt. ACC, SEC teams.
Will they all go to 34?
Probably in the SEC for sure.
Okay.
And so you're going to be playing with a smaller deck in a sport like baseball unless you choose to fund it. But in the Big Ten, guess what sports are the equivalency of baseball in the SEC? Wrestling and volleyball. Those are the 2 sports right now where the Big Ten wins the national championship almost every year.
Right.
So you have to fund those sports.
Right. I think, now again, we're just having discussion. We don't always agree. I think one of Nebraska's biggest quandaries going forward is men's basketball. They cannot fund at a level that Michigan, Maryland, Purdue, Indiana fund. They can't do it. I don't think they will do it. Don't even know if they'll try to do it. Right? Am I wrong?
So what are you playing for then? You're hoping to kind of catch lightning in a bottle.
Right.
Get a team that develops and gets hot under.
Right.
I mean, because what Fred Hoiberg does well is he draws up elite offensive systems.
He does. We're affected by that conversation most profoundly is I, as a columnist, have to adjust the way I treat Fred. I cannot expect Fred. I can't continue in the vein of saying, why can't Nebraska compete for a Big Ten championship? Because they can't.
I mean, this is an extreme example,
can't.
but it'd be like saying the Oakland A's,
right.
whatever they're going to be called now,
right.
is going to compete with the Yankees. But on the flip side, the Tampa Bay Rays,
occasionally they do.
No, they have a chance to win the division this year against the Yankees. So
there's examples. Nebraska might catch lightning in a bottle, like you said, but on a just standard, generally speaking, I've adjusted my mindset with Fred this offseason. I said, I cannot continue to be critical of Fred for being in the middle of the pack because that's where the money dictates that Nebraska is. Fans have to get used to that.
If you're playing with, say, 3.5 and the other teams are playing with 8
or more,
Sean,
I think Maryland would be more than that.
And that's rev share with NIL.
Yeah.
It's not. So everyone's rev share is going to be limited to a certain level.
I would say, I just want people to understand what we're talking about. I think Maryland's more like 11 or 12.
When you count their NIL with the rev share.
And so if they're $8 million more than Nebraska or $7 million more, whatever the number is, it's a big number.
And that's why it's crazy.
How do you compete with that?
You have to identify right and find guys and get a Keisei Tominaga at a Ranger community college. You have to find, I mean, there's still an art of recruiting to find players that are, that can end up being good players for you.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And it's not that, Sean, I want to make clear. I'm sorry, I've hijacked into this to a basketball.
Yeah, I don't know why you're going so bad.
Well, because that's the sport I look at that's affected maybe the most.
Our users are more interested in there's a big faction about baseball that are really concerned. I think what we have to see is what will the rest of the Big Ten do with their baseball funding? Mm-hmm. What will Oregon do? What will USC do? What will UCLA do?
What will Oregon do?
I mean, how much?
What do you think Oregon will do?
But right now you can't because of it comes out of your 20.5. Once they get rid of that, hopefully, what will Oregon do? I mean, I would assume most Big Ten schools will fully fund as much as they can, as far as the new roster limits and the scholarships.
But Oregon can still play the NIL game at a high level.
Correct.
So that's what
I mean, they have a guy worth $40 billion.
And they can play it at a high level. And that's where there's one part of the discussion that I think we have to address. And that is, I think I've misled people a little bit. that and I think the media has done a lot of this by saying the NIL component with the clearinghouse, NIL is gonna take this huge drop, and it's gonna be really hard to pay kids as much, and that still may be the case, but we may be overstating it. I sent you this text from an attorney who said these third party deals with this clearinghouse scrutiny. He said the consensus among most sports attorneys is that third party NIL deals above $600 signed after June 6th, we know they'll be subject to clearinghouse scrutiny. He believes people are putting too much stock in Deloitte putting an end to third-party NIL deals as we currently know them. He said getting those deals structured so they are approved or win at arbitration will not be that hard. Now, that's different from what I've heard.
And, well, I talked to one prominent agent.
What he said?
He said and Ross Dellinger's reported this too, but everything that's gone to the clearinghouse now is passed pretty easily. So, look, lawyers are lawyers. They're good.
There's going to be lawyers on both sides of that topic. There's going to be lawyers saying it's going to be difficult, and then there's going to be lawyers saying, no, we can structure deals so they'll go through.
Or there's just going to be blatant cheating that doesn't go through the clearinghouse. And
right. That's where the College Sports Commission comes in. There is a commission now. Nobody talks about it, run by the former MLB executive Ryan Seeley, with the help of the conference commissioners. That's going to police all. It's supposed to police all of this.
You can't really police, though, people's personal bank accounts. Like, they don't have that type of ability to say, hey, we need to check over Bill's bank and see who's paying him.
So are you suggesting that the evolution turns back to the way it was for so many years? Like in the when we always talk about the cliche is the SEC's paying everybody. We'll just be under the table.
I hope not, but it's going to make it something that people think about more if it means they, if they can't get everything through a clearinghouse.
We're talking about under the table.
Under the table. You could pay a family member. You could do whatever you have to do, but the biggest thing about rev share is there's been no collective bargaining on the behalf of the players.
Right, that's the issue.
And it's almost as backwards as it was before. How do you make these decisions about what to pay the players, how to pay the players, but don't involve the players? And that's the biggest legal issue I think that you're going to see over time is the players deserve a voice in this. Like, who came up with 20.5? How did we come up with that number when we know right now that there are teams that are paying their athletes $35 million already?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, automatically you're going to tell Texas they've got to come up with $15 million
mm-hmm.
on top of whatever they legally can do.
Well, is some of that solved by schools like Texas and USC, really moneyed schools that it's apparent them sort of shrugging off the 20.5 number and saying 20.5 is it's the published number. It's the number we're all working with, but we'll go above it. We'll just find ways to go above. Sean, is that what it is?
I think that teams are just going to challenge it because they know there's just going to be, look, we're nowhere near knowing what this is going to look like.
But you would also say that right now, and I'm convinced of this, that there is more structure there is. As of the court ruling, House versus NCAA, it did provide some structure that was needed. It's not perfect, but you're not going to get perfection, but you did get progress. I believe that.
It really is amazing to think, though, like now Nebraska's giant apparatus and the resources, they're going to be kind of leading the charge to pay the athletes. Collectives that might have only had 3, 4, 5 employees were like doing all this.
Good point. They were. We witnessed it.
And it's crazy to think now, like 2, 3, 4 people were doing all this. And
we witnessed it. It was probably not easy to do.
No. And now you're going to have the entire apparatus of the university involved doing it.
That's what I mean. That's progress, right? That's progress. Yeah, there's going to be some litigation and we'll keep reading about it and dealing with it. But I think there's enough structure in place to go forward with an operation that makes some sense. That's the way I look at it.
I remember our early days. We used to do some interviews that had sponsors through the original collective ABM.
The early days. What are you talking about?
NIL.
2021?
Yeah.
Was it 2021?
21.
Yeah. This was summer of 2021.
And 2022, both those summers. But, we would interview a guy and there'd be a sponsor that's tied to like whoever the NIL partner of the collective was. And we didn't get any money for this, obviously. We were just doing it for the content.
Like Casey Thompson.
And the minute a guy would do an interview and it was over and they, proved it was a legit deal, they got paid that second. Like the deposits would,
that's why those guys wanted to do the interview.
So there was nobody late back then in the collective or whoever would pay, and it'd have to run through compliance. They'd have to submit it through and, they'd have to take a picture, show a screenshot of what they did to earn the money and the proof of performance, but they would get paid like that second.
What a world.
Yeah, it's a little bit more.
So July 1, big date, right?
Big day.
Yeah. And we are of the mind that 1890 still has value in this world.
Well, they're going to be needed as kind of the second part to this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 20.5 is only going to get you so far long term. 1890 has to structure and organize the endorsement deals that are going to help get you over the top. And that's where, your local businesses and corporations in Nebraska have to come through.
There's always skeptics about 1890, but I would tell those skeptics, it's not going away. Its importance is still great.
If 1890 wasn't here, Nebraska, as Troy Dannon said, we'd be on our knees. And he goes, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be able to get back up.
Ooh.
That's what he said on Big Red Wrap Up.
Really?
Like, I don't think people realize like the donation and the money the Peds have put forward of their own money. Like tens, if I had a guess, 10, 20 plus $1 million of their own money has had to float, if not more. I'm just guessing.
Because they're covering operation
costs. And there's no commission. So like if an employee of 1890 gets somebody to donate $1 million, like they don't get to take money off the top of that as a commission.
And when we talk about operation fees, we're talking about accountants, we're talking about lawyers, we're talking about the
marketing, mailing,
fundraisers,
magazines,
yep,
apparel, office space.
Think about what we just said. That's a lot.
There's no collective in the country that had like the setup Nebraska had over there down the street. I've heard
downtown
that from many people.
Right. So it's not, I hope people just don't have this vision of a little office set up in the Haymarket where somebody might be in there and somebody might not be. No, it's a formidable operation.
Yeah. For whatever, it's just kind of a microcosm of the world we live in. People tend to pick sides and then they don't want to believe things. And then they just stick with their side. And you can use that in the world we live in a lot of things now. And there was a faction of people that just wanted to believe that. And then they continue to still.
I know. I still see it. It's odd.
It's a weird
I wish
deal.
They would just go over to that office and look at.
Yeah, they'd be embarrassed if they did. Like how dumb they'd look if they went up there and got a tour and like saw everything and how much money it's had to go forward. You'd almost feel like an idiot if seriously. Like why? I don't know.
No, you're fine. I hear you. I totally agree with you, Sean.
All right. Let's go to headline number 2. Again, we're brought to you by StayHome.Care. Call them, learn more about them, their services at 402-205-2233. Thanks to StayHome.Care. We're also brought to you by Billings Group. They're a trio of financial advisors made up of Lance and his 2 sons-in-law, Josh and Nate. Yep, sons-in-law, 2 of them. They're based in Salina, Kansas, because someone has to be, and they serve clients in more than 10 states, including places you've actually heard of, like Nebraska, Colorado, and Texas. They do financial advising and coaching, investment management, basically all the stuff that you should be doing with your money, but you probably aren't. Also, Nate is a lifelong Nebraska fan, a longtime listener of the show. And if you ever watched Nebraska football or the stock market, you know both are emotional roller coasters. And that's why Billings Group is here to walk you through the highs and the lows. Billings Group, financial advisors by your side for life's journey. They don't offer therapy, but they are good listeners. Visit them at billingsgroup.com. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services. Member FERNA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives through RFG Advisory. Registered investment advisor, RFG Advisory. Billings Group and Private Client Services are unaffiliated entities.
Favorite part of the show.
It was funny. I had a listener mention to me, and we talked about Salina.
Yes.
In this, and he said, as you were talking about Salina, I'm listening to your show on the plane, and my flight from Denver had to divert and make an emergency landing
in Salina.
Wow. And he goes, it was like almost like God talking to me. Yes, Sean's talking about Salina. Our plane lands in Salina.
That is an odd occurrence.
So Billings Group.
Yes.
All right, let's head into headline number 2. We are still very much on commit watch. Looks like Nebraska is on line SIP to get a couple of wide receivers here over the weekend.
Yep.
Nayland Scott, currently committed to Arizona State.
Okay.
Basically, he's a 4-star by some, a high 3 by others, out of Georgia. Larry Miles, another receiver who's ranked by a 4-star by some, 3 by others, is another one to watch here coming up. And then Claude and Puma is one more that we'll be watching closely here in the coming days, a 4-star offensive lineman out of Chicago.
I talked to Brian Munson at length yesterday. Brian Munson covers recruiting for On3, HuskerOnline, at a very high level. He's great. He's great. Now, what he says about Nayland Scott, he's not a burner, but he's 6'3". He's a bigger, he's a taller receiver, which you know how I feel about that. I love it. Not a burner, but can win in man. He said can play outside and in the slot. So you can put him, you can get him in matchups. Great get, pretty highly recruited kid. Miles is a smaller receiver. When I hear him talk about Miles, I think of Isaiah Mosey. Miles, they will line up in the backfield. They will line him up they'll line him up in a lot of places. Larry Miles, Winter Park, Florida kid. Both really strong gets. Very strong I'm happy for the quarterbacks. These are kind of guys you need, Sean. And they got Nayland Scott, pried him away from Arizona.
Well, he visited in April. He visited here in April, and then he committed to Arizona State the next week after visiting there. And it caught everyone by surprise that he jumped on that, because knowing Arizona State's policy, Kenny Dillingham is very strict that if you visit somewhere else as a commit, you're out. So theoretically, he's probably already out at Arizona State. But every situation's different. I don't think you can, look at that one and know for sure. But yeah, those are the 3 right now, SIP, that we're kind of keeping tabs on. I mean, there's definitely Devin Jackson as well, a defensive back out of Florida.
For sure.
Is one to watch.
Yeah, that's definitely one to watch. Probably safety, Sean.
The thing about announcements is sometimes you don't know exactly when they're going to drop, because what holds things up is they wait for an edit. Like Hayes Fawcett is, the world's most famous editor, does the recruit edits
on 3.
And these kids all want Hayes to do it. Well, there's a process that you go through to know when he's going to drop your edit. So I think some of these kids wait for that, and so you don't know. Like one of the guys said, "Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be this day or that day. I'm waiting on Hayes."
Okay, and yeah, that makes sense. The other guy, I think a guy to watch is Leon Noyle too, according to Brian. This is a 6'4", 255-pound. He's listed as a tackle he's Edna Carr. Nebraska's had kids from Edna Carr during the Bo era, right?
He's really raw though, Leon Noyle. He's undersized for a tackle body.
I don't think he'd be a tackle. I think they'd move him in. He's to guard or center.
Darian Jones, Omaha North.
Yeah, we should mention Jones.
It looks like Iowa. I mean, I talked to Tom Kakert, and I was talking to him at length yesterday, and I'll just say this: the folks at Iowa inside the football department, they're very confident where they sit right now on that. Is
that what you lose Darian Jones, you get Devin Jackson maybe.
Right. And I think, to be fair, Darian Jones grew up an Iowa fan. That's who he liked growing up.
God, it hurts to hear that.
Well, his dad played ball at South Dakota. He's actually his father, DeAndre, is the athletic director of Benson.
So it's not like he grew up a Nebraska fan.
One in that generation, right. I think, that we have to come to those terms that, growing up with the 1995 national championship poster in your room, that's over. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a new generation of
I've
kids.
Experienced it with my grandkids. They don't, I mean, think about what they grew up with. Just watching Nebraska get pounded a lot, right?
Well, a lot of these kids now were barely alive when Ndamukong Suh was playing here. So what do you think Tommy Frazier and Eric Crouch are? Those are like guys in leather helmets to young kids.
Oh, Sean, you're right. You're not wrong. That was a very profound quote. That Eric Crouch is like a guy in a leather helmet to those guys, and that's exactly right. You're 100% right. It's like Sammy Baugh to us, you know.
Well, even like an example I'll use. Remember when Jordan Westerkamp caught the Hail Mary in like 2013, and everybody really wanted to pound on the 97 Davison and kind of compare it. And Westerkamp kind of joked. He's like, I mean, like I was barely alive when that happened. I don't know much about that play.
Right. Interesting, Sean.
But yeah,
so that's a battle. That's a battle Nebraska fights. And I sit by a guy, Bill Bush, every day. It makes it pretty clear you're still battling geography. That's still a
perception.
Battle. Yeah, perception, geography. Those are still battles.
And just getting, like if I just like you, if I hey, let's go to Maine. You've never been to Maine.
I have all kinds of
thoughts about what Maine. Then you'd probably get there and you'd be like, God, I could probably live here. I love this. I mean,
maybe, or I might guess it might be worse than I think. But anyway,
I'm just trying to. I was just coming up with an obscure place.
Yeah, I mean, but then they get here, and I'll tell you what. One thing you always hear is the Haymarket. It's very appealing. The Haymarket is very appealing to people. It's safe. There's a lot there. There's usually a lot going on down there on the weekends. So
I had one coach tell me this years about traveling to Lincoln or Omaha. For a lot of these kids, there's a connection involved, and even just taking a connection on the flight, they're not used to that. Like
you hear that all the time.
If you live in a big city, like Miami or Atlanta or Dallas, you just get somewhere in one trip. I mean, pretty easily a lot of times, but when there's a connection involved,
it's a deal breaker for some.
Like a lot of people are like, wait, you got to go to Chicago, then Lincoln? I think that's also kind of like a tough thing sometimes for folks.
Well, we heard Nico's dad. Nico, go ahead and say the last name there. Big shooter.
Amelie Aviava.
Yeah, something like that. But he said that. He says they're from California. And he says it's a tough trip. It was a tough trip. I still kind of have to think about, okay, I guess it would be because there's a connection.
If there is a direct to that's offered, it's usually pretty expensive or harder to get.
Yeah.
There's an LAX direct. There's a Miami direct. I mean, there are directs out of Omaha to these places, but they could cost like $900 for a flight.
Now, we should give voice to the fact that Nebraska does have some advantages too. For instance, a world-class training facility now that we've seen up close because we've been at those camps. We're like walk in the weight room and it's stunning how nice that place is.
And for Matt Rule, that's why he needs people to get here.
Yeah.
Like they use that huddle recruiting symposium as a Trojan horse to get kids here.
Works because those kids come here and they say, wow, this is how many times have you heard in our interviews?
Hundreds.
Kids say, this is not what I expected.
Hundreds.
Yeah. They always say that. This is not what I expected. And now with the training facility, you hear that all the time. It's like, wow, that training facility still has value in the recruiting process. NIL, rev share, pay trumps everything. But that training facility still there's value.
Well, even in the food. I mean, just
food. Yes.
The world that we live in now, how much content is out there about food? A lot.
You always emphasize that. You're right.
I mean, people take pictures of themselves eating in the car or like videos of them eating a meal. TikToks. But if you have like high level food like that offered every day at the highest level of anywhere, I mean, they work with a company that only serves NFL teams, Flick.
Oh, you hear people talk about the high-end food. They can't believe it, how good it is over there.
And they use locally sourced produce and other items and meats.
Are we a food-oriented society more in America than other places?
I would say so.
We don't know because we don't travel much.
People eat more here, though.
You think so?
Yes. I mean, just based on like what you see in Europe and other places, like, yeah, the portions are bigger here and
not probably than everywhere. Like Italy, don't they eat a lot in Italy?
No. Like,
I haven't been around much. I mean, I've been to those Caribbean islands. They don't eat like they don't eat in the Caribbean.
Ireland.
Islands. Yeah, how's Ireland?
Well, you were with me.
I know. Didn't seem to be as big an emphasis.
Food's not as seasoned. Like that's one thing. Like it's good though. We had some good seafood and
we did.
But like if you get a French fry in Ireland, it was like so bland.
Bland. What was that? What's that? Guinness beer?
Yeah.
One of the most overrated things in the world.
Oh, come on.
Hello. Now. I'm saying it.
You had like half of one. You didn't even finish one, I don't think. You sat in the lobby bar and ate wings like 4 of the nights.
I did. They're really good wings, and they ran out of them.
You ate wings in the lobby bar in Dublin like 4 nights.
They were really good wings. Guinness, way overrated. Way overrated. Way overrated.
I'm still laughing about our rooms and like how they were supposed to be paid for. And they were.
Yeah, they were.
That was we had this trip lined up with the game organizers, and somehow like there was a miscommunication on something, but our rooms were paid for by the game, but they evidently weren't.
Oh,
remember that?
I didn't remember that.
They kept going. So we had, when the airport van showed up, I'm like, guys, everybody just get in the van and go.
I do remember that. We got out of there.
No, we got it. I mean, they got it figured out, but
it's a nice hotel.
It was a great spot. Yeah. All right, let's get in before we go to headline number 3. Brought to you by StayHome.Care. Again, call them. They offer great services for you, your family. Provide companionship for, maybe someone that just needs someone to spend time with them for 15 or 20 hours a week to help them out around the house, take them places. Call them at 402-205-2233. They have over 100 workers that support and help them, and they help you and your families. They're a great, great company. And then we're brought to you by Brunt Workwear. And look, if you're not familiar with Brunt, premium work boots, some of the best you're going to get. Also great, great work items and clothes, in terms of, stuff you're going to wear on the job site. They got some great 4th of July shirts too. One of my favorites, the American Worker.
Mm-hmm. Why is that one of your favorites, Sean?
Because I'm going to get it for you. This is like if you wore this shirt to a press conference, everyone would be like, "Oh yeah, that's a great shirt, Sip."
Well, I'm open to the idea of doing it.
American Worker.
They do have nice stuff. Those boots I have that they gave us are tremendous. That I wear I wear these shoes I got on now, these kind of slip-on summer shoes, and those boots. Those are my go-tos.
And the boots we have kind of more like their entry-level work boot. I mean, you can go like fireproof level.
Right.
I mean,
I don't need
we don't need fireproof boots, but they have that. They have shoes. Really, really good stuff. Just
it's handsome stuff too. I mean, these are, just keep scrolling. There's the boots right there, far right. Those are nice. They're nice. Those right there. Those are them. I love them. They're a lot of support, and they look good.
And these will last you like 10 years.
And they look good with jeans too.
But go to bruntworkwear.com/Husker.
If they last me 10 years, that might be getting me to the finish line, Sean.
Your retirement gift. bruntworkwear.com/Husker. The promo code's Husker. You'll get $10 off your order of Brunt Workwear. Again, that's bruntworkwear.com/Husker. Use the promo code Husker. Thanks to Brunt. All right, I want to get in this story. Headline 3, AL.com, which is essentially the Omaha World Herald of Alabama, like the main newspaper of the state of Alabama. Covers Birmingham, Huntsville, all the major markets in the state of Alabama, Mobile. They tracked how much SEC football coaches were golfing during May and June. What do you think of that?
I read the column last night. I listened to I think it was a podcast where they had a former player on. Okay, we talk about SEC country where it just matters more. This is an example. There's not a lot of, I don't sense that this column, his name is Michael Casagrande, that wrote this opinion column that Hugh Freeze is playing too much golf and it's affecting his recruiting. I think it's preposterous, but a lot of people don't look at it that
So
way.
they didn't cross a line to be fair, like, to get this information. There's a pub, and I'm not a big golfer, but I know this website exists. It's the handicap website, GHIN,
Right.
GHIN, I believe is how you spell it.
GHIN is correct.
Where every time you log around a golf, you enter your score, and it's kind of an honor system, but it gives you your proper handicap. So then when you play in events like member guest and other things, you're properly ranked as a golfer, and like what your handicap is. So this reporter went in the GHIN website, and these coaches were clearly logging their scores to keep their GHIN active. And that's all he did. He pulled. And
well, let's be clear on something. This wasn't actually it wasn't Casa Grande that did this. It was an Auburn Live. This is on 3. It was a message board poster who was basically the watchdog in this. His name is Johnny Barn. His post occurred on Monday, and it was verified by a reporter at AL.com. So it was verified. And it turns out, now you can speak on this, Sean. You know the game. Freeze recorded 10 rounds of golf in the first 20 days of June. Okay. What do you think? Is that too much?
A round of golf is like, you could say it's probably 4 to 6 hours easily.
Mm-hmm.
Depending
10
on
rounds of June in 20 days.
So let's say that's 50 to 60 hours of time.
There's 2 problems I have with this whole article discussion. First of all, there's no way to gauge the amount of impact it had on Auburn's recruiting class, which is they lost 3 key guys and they're not in a good spot. They're in the 80s, but there's no way to make the correlation accurately. How do you do that? So first of all, it's faulty in that regard. Then the second part of it is, now I'm really interested to hear what you think of this, because we talk about these sorts of matters all the time. If I came to you and said, listen, I know the head coach has played 10 rounds of golf the first 20 days of June. I'm going to write it and say he can't be doing that. I think it's incumbent in that situation I would say I got to call the coach and talk to him about, and at least say, I'm going to write this. Give him a chance to respond.
And he might say, yeah, these are NIL fundraisers. These are people tied to NIL that we're trying to get money from.
Right. Could be that.
And that's a legit reason. Like, this guy that's going to give us $5 million towards our collective, he wants to have a meeting with me on the golf course. Like, to me, there's nothing wrong with that.
Could be that. How much is a head coach involved? He can't go on visits in June, right?
No, they come on campus.
They have to be there.
Now, you could go to satellite camps, but they're not doing that anymore.
Right. So what Hugh Freeze could say is, I was at the stadium when I needed to be at the stadium. Yeah, I played some golf, but I was there when I needed to be.
On the weekend, yeah. Look, the coach, I think you're really on a slippery slope here when you start to try to get, people tried to accuse obviously Frost of being a big golfer and
simulated golf.
Well, simulated. No, he played at the country club too.
Yeah.
A lot of guys like to golf. There's no problem with Fred Hoiberg loves to golf.
Fred, this from our discussions with Rob and Washit. Fred often is playing with donors. Darren
Erstad, now that he's retired, he's an avid golfer. Like, you see Darren Erstad all around. Coaches like to golf. It's not that big of a deal.
Well, where do you come down on this?
I think, like you said, I think you need to probably ask, hey, because they could have a legit reason. These were NIL meetings. We were meeting with boosters, or this had to do with our collective. They had people that wanted to meet with me and talk at length about giving money, and they might want to do it on the golf course. So you have to do it. Like Matt Rule, I can say this. When I was with him in Omaha at the Omaha Stakes competition, I said, "Are you going to the game after this? We're done." He goes, "No." He goes, "I'm going out to dinner now with a group of people for NIL."
I think he spends a lot of his free time doing that.
And so these coaches, when they're not recruiting or coaching or doing other things, they're meeting with people to raise money.
Okay, Now, what if Hugh Freeze isn't? What if he says, no, I wasn't meeting with any donors. I was just playing golf.
Then you got a problem.
No, do you though? I don't know I'm not convinced you do. Now, what Casagrande says is it's just a bad look that you don't lose games. You don't lose games in June, but you can lose the perception battle. And he says that Freeze shanked another one. He said it's not a traditional loss, but it's another online setback at a time he could really use wins. He's under 500 in 2 years there.
I would almost venture to guess a lot of coaches now, after this story came out, are not going to put their scores in gin anymore.
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if there's been coaches' staff meetings in the wake of this report that says, hey, if you play golf, don't put your score in there.
I mean, if you're playing competitively at a high level, you need that. But the member I know it's the member guest events that like country clubs run are huge.
Right.
And you have to have a legit gin to play in these. And
you were about to say it's a world I'm not involved in.
Well, I'm not either. Like,
right.
There was a time where I'm like, God, it'd be cool to be able to play golf at that level. And I've just come to the conclusion I'm not going to be able to.
I don't think you're missing much, to be honest.
I just didn't grow up doing that. It's just not something that we did.
No, I mean, it's something that was in my family. One of my brothers and my dad did all that. They played golf all the time.
But you have to play a lot to get good at golf, a lot, and practice. I mean, just like anything.
Well, Hugh's playing a lot. I kind of understand the other side of it a little bit. I think it's just where I kind of framed this up in my mind, Sean, it's just typical SEC. It's just it's a little weird down there. They take everything pretty far, you know.
Auburn's I mean, you think about what they did to Brian Harsin.
Yeah, there was that. What do you mean? Like personal life stuff?
Well, they just fired him. Like they tried to go out.
They went in his personal life, you know. And I wouldn't be. How much of this is this Casagrande an Alabama fan? That's what I would wonder. Right,
Auburn Live is the Auburn fan site board.
Yeah. Well,
you have to be an Auburn.
Casagrande's not on Auburn Live.
Oh,
Casagrande is AL.com.
I'm saying the person that did all the posting.
Yeah, that's Auburn Live. That's like HuskerOnline.
Yeah, it'd be a user on our board. It'd be like Sugarland on our board, or somebody putting that all together.
Right,
like,
and you know what? For a message board, that's cool. I mean, that's discussion.
Message boards have a big value and things like that, especially
100%. And that's discussion. You look at it, and then me and you, so people give a real world look at us. If Sugarland or whoever did something like that and tracked the number of rounds that a Nebraska coach were playing, and it was sizable, like Hugh Freeze, we'd have to have a discussion. And I think part of the discussion would be, hey, if we do this, we got to get a hold of the head coach.
Again, why are you putting all your scores in gin?
Well, it wouldn't be that. It would be, Sean, the question would have to be, do you feel like you're playing too much golf? Because I'm writing a column that suggests you might be. Casagrande didn't do that. Well, I think if you're writing that column and you're coming out with that opinion, I think you have to ask the coach and see what he says. And you don't have to agree with what he says. It's an opinion column. But I still think you got to reach out to him.
All right.
And not blindside him with that.
Before we get into headline number 4, again, we're brought to you by StayHome.Care. Call them at 402-205-2233. Learn more about them and the great services they can give you and your family. We're also brought to you by Huel. Huel is a great, great product, especially when you're on the go. It gives you everything. 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's high in fiber and low in sugar. So you will feel full, focused, and ready for your day. I've had Huel many times just in the car ride when you don't have time to eat breakfast in the morning. Pop one of those in, and you're set till lunch. It comes in a lot of great flavors, ready to go. Strawberry, vanilla, coffee bean, you name it. They've got a lot of great, ready to go flavors of Huel, also in a powder blend as well. And we've got a great, great promo. If you've never tried Huel as a Husker Online listener, you're going to get 15% off as a new customer. And all you got to do is use the code Husker at Huel.com. Again, that's promo code Husker at Huel.com, and you'll get 15% off of Huel as a new customer. Thanks to Huel for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Headline Show. All right, it's Friday, and that means, what does that mean?
Flashback Friday.
So we kind of did a different one here today because of the announcement of Kyle Crooks, the new play-by-play voice for Nebraska. I want to do Flashback Friday, Lyell R. Bremser.
Yeah, when you told me yesterday that was what we're going to do, what was my reaction?
Yes.
God bless you. We get to talk today. About an absolute marvel, Lyell Bremser, who, by the way, didn't know this, should have known it. I'll start it off with this. And you know a lot about Lyell Bremser because you come from that world more than I do. Lyell Bremser was a play-by-play voice for Nebraska and didn't miss a game for 45 years. Did not miss a game for 45 years.
I'm about half. I've only missed one game from 2000 to now.
Yeah, you're
03, I missed one game.
Yeah, I've missed one game in 30 years. Minnesota game because of a family.
And we were both at all the COVID games, which there was only like 3 of us that did that.
Yeah. But Bremser never missed a game. And when you think of Lyell Bremser, Sean, what do you think of? You're a broadcaster. You're trained broadcaster.
You know, the thing about Bremser from 39 to 84, I mean, there's just this mystique about him.
Thank you.
But you knew him only on the air. I felt like you didn't, he kept a very private profile behind the scenes. Like you don't see like him talking like we're talking on camera. Like,
no, you never saw that.
Like even on a story about when he retired, they aired it on the news. He wasn't even interviewed in the story. So he kind of had this mystique where his voice was so golden that you only heard it on the game. Like you didn't really get him behind the scenes. But, I've worked with Gary Saddlemeyer since 2007, and he worked with Lyell, traveled on the road with Lyell, and Lyell was like his boss. I mean, Lyell was the boss of KFAB in Omaha.
Well, and the general manager,
yeah.
And under his watch, at one point, they were rated their ratings were such, and they were so successful that they were the #1 radio station in America.
And they still are at that level in terms of their rankings.
Mm-hmm.
iHeartMedia is a large company of radio stations around the country. And KFAB in Omaha, pound for pound, is still arguably iHeart's if not one of their most valuable stations. It has the signal. And that's what really helped Lyell Bremser when he started announcing the Nebraska games. You could hear KFAB everywhere. And so that power of that signal, along with his calls, his persona, elevated him and KFAB to a high level that, they still are today.
Bremser, when he retired as the play-by-play voice, Bob tried to talk him out of it. He made that much of an impact that I think Devaney was the AD at the time and tried to
84.
Tried to talk him out of it.
It was Gary, Kent Pavelka, and Bremser. They were the
Gary Payne.
No, Gary Saddlemeyer.
I'm sorry. Jack Payne wasn't involved in that?
Jack Payne was involved at one time.
Okay.
But Pavelka then moved up to play-by-play.
Yep.
Saddlemeyer then moved into the color role.
Right. So, yeah, I remember interviews where Pavelka said it was much like when Osborne replaced Devaney. There was a huge challenge there.
39 to 84.
Yeah.
But I've been able to meet some of Bremser's family. I met his granddaughter, at an event. Beth Morissette out of Omaha. She's tied to Omaha Westside High School. Met her at an event we did, and I've met Al Makowitz, who actually traveled. He was the son-in-law of Lyell Bremser. He traveled with the crews back in the day, and the thing you always hear about Lyell, he was just so all business, all class.
Oh yeah, that was one thing I heard on a podcast, or I guess it wasn't a podcast because it was when he retired. It was somebody recreated the newscast, and they said that he would almost go into hiding 2 months before the season because he was getting prepared. He was getting his preparation done for Nebraska, getting his preparation done for opponents. He almost became a reclusive. I mean, he was a pro. I mean, he's a big time pro. And I mean, I grew up listening to him, and the impact he's had on Nebraska football fans of a certain age, it's profound. You just figured all announcers were that good. But then as you grow up, you're like, no, they're not.
Well, there's two things that really add to it. I mean, the winning too.
Yeah, it's true.
Like the fact that
helped.
So when you have a winning team, you really want to hear that voice.
Mm-hmm. He was part of the mystique, though, of Nebraska football. He was a big part of it.
Like Greg Sharp, phenomenal play-by-play announcer, late Greg Sharp. But the team's never won at a high level. If Nebraska, was winning, like Pavelka, people still idolize Pavelka because of those national championship years,
and also because back then, those broadcasts were much more listened to. There's not as much need for them now.
So the last time there's been just a radio-only Nebraska football game, 2007.
2007.
I know that because I was a part of the broadcast.
Radio only. So back in the day, those broadcasts, when I was growing up, they were monumentally important because chances are the game wasn't on TV.
And you had to listen, and there was no streaming and pay-per-view. And
you were hanging on every word, and Bremser painted an incredible picture with this certain sort of personality that was unique. And, then it became some of his calls became iconic. The Johnny Rogers punt return, the man, woman, and child became an iconic phrase in our state because of Lyell Bremser. Man, woman, and child. It's incredible.
He gave Gary Saddlemeyer some advice when he first started doing the radio years ago, and he just said, Gary, anytime you say more than what the time is or the temperature, be prepared for people to challenge you. Basically, like, you have an opinion on it. If you go on the radio and say anything more than what the time is or what the temperature is, be prepared for people to fire back at you.
So I challenge you all the time, Sean.
That's why I do too.
But yeah, I'm glad. I think, Kyle Crooks, I like his calls. He's walking into a job that with some history. There's a lot of great history attached to that job that he has. Well, and Lyell Bremser, I'd say Lyell Bremser is the most important part of it, right? Would you say that?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's the original voice, then Pavelka, obviously was the next one. And I'd probably, you had Warren Swain, Jim Rose.
Yeah. Those guys were great.
And then Gary and Greg Sharp.
Right.
I mean, that's been the line of voices since 1939 of Nebraska football. And, people are like, oh, Crooks is a younger guy. Well, Lyell Bremser was really young when he started. Pavelka was really young.
I hope he's young. He was at 45 years.
I mean, all these broadcasters were probably about that age or even younger. Yeah. And you hope that you hit with Crooks, and he's the guy here for a long, long time. Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're Troy Dannon, he wants that. He wants to build a guy that's going to be the voice of Nebraska football for probably 25 years, long time.
Right.
Because that is important, to have Gene Deckerhoff at Florida State calling games for many, many years.
It's still important. Back then, it was more important because, like we established, games weren't on TV a lot of the time. The
challenge now at the stadium, I mean, FM, you need an FM signal, obviously, but it's hard to get radios in the store that have AM on them. Like, you have to order them on Amazon or get them sent to you. I mean,
or go to a antique shop.
But they don't sell like AM radio Walkmans and things like that. I mean, AM is big for the car when you're driving around. So the AM dial is not what it used to be. When, like, back in the day, you would have KFAB on in the stadium or KLIN, whatever one you wanted to turn on, and the game was synced up to the live play. Where now sometimes they'll sync the gameplay up to match it up with TV because they think people are going to have the radio on with their TV.
Yeah.
But I love when they have it synced up live because I do like listening to the broadcast at my seat.
Yeah, you do that. The only thing I'd add on this is a lot of guys my age remember very well Saturdays. You'd have the radio out. In our case, it was the patio, and we'd sit on the patio and listen to the game. during the warm part of the season. Or I can remember my dad washing the car, now waxing the car. I mean, it wasn't just like a 15-minute wash, but he'd listen to the game while he was doing that. And I'd just sit out there and listen to it. Guys, people all over that are listening to us have those sort of memories.
And then you used your imagination of what it looked like.
100%. And it was much more romantic back then because you didn't know everything. You didn't know what everybody looked like. When they're on TV, I always say the romanticism is lost now. I loved being part of a time where there was this mystique and romanticism where you would then, the rare times when Nebraska was on TV, you would watch so closely because you'd be like, oh, that's what Tony Davis looks like. Oh, that's Rick Burns. I'll be damned. It'd make a big impression on you. Oh, wow, look at the uniforms. Sweet.
And that's why like TV coaches shows used to be bigger back then.
Yeah. Because you look for everything.
Well, because the TV coaches show would go through every play.
Uh-huh.
And Osborne would sit there and do like an hour show where he'd go through every play.
Yep. And just even with Osborne, what I came to appreciate about Osborne is he didn't say a whole lot. And if he praised someone at all, it was like, oh, better watch that guy. Osborne just said that kid has a bright future. That was like, stop the presses.
Hold on.
Yeah, Osborne just said a kid has a bright future. We better look into this. That's the way it was.
Lyell Bremser, Flashback Friday. That was a lot of fun. All right. Final headline. Again, we're brought to you by StayHome.Care. Call them at 402-205-2233. Also, we've got Husker Night at the K, August 29th in Kansas City. We've got discounts in our bio of the show here, also on my social media handles, but particularly here on the YouTube bio. There's a link. You can get discounted tickets and discounted parking for the Nebraska-Kansas City Royals game. That will be August 29th. That's Husker Night at the K. The Huskers play Cincinnati and Arrowhead the night before. There's a free windbreaker that Nebraska fans can receive as well as part of your game ticket to go to Husker Night at the K. We've got discounts for you. We hope to see you there. I know I think we've had close to 1,000 people already. We've had several hundred, I'll say, that have already come in and bought tickets to go out, and we know many, many more people are going to attend. But we want to really pump this up and hopefully get a lot of Nebraska fans at the K.
Yeah, it's only what's today, June 20. What is it? June 27th?
Yeah, 2 months. We got 2 months.
2 months. 2 months to go. It'll go fast.
So check out that link in our show bio here. And finally, let's go into odds and ends. Some bowl projections. CBS has Nebraska Sipple going to the Las Vegas Bowl, which is now a December 31st bowl.
That would mean 8, right? 8 wins. Would that mean 8?
Yeah. So they had 3 playoff teams in the Big Ten: Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State. They had Michigan and Indiana and Illinois kind of slotted above Nebraska. So I don't think anything they did was like out of bounds. And then Nebraska is kind of in that next wave of bowls.
That'd be fine. It wouldn't be extraordinary. It'd be fun. I mean, if we're actually covering Nebraska, Arizona State, and Las Vegas on December 31st, that'd be fun.
On New Year's
fun
Eve.
For fans. Yeah. Fun for fans. Good opponent.
Sam Leavitt, as a quarterback, you wonder if he'd even play in that bowl game. If
oh, wow.
Hypotheticals.
Wow.
If he's a first rounder.
So he's draft eligible.
Yeah. He's one of the top quarterbacks.
Oh, I know who Sam Leavitt is.
You talked to him.
Yeah. Because Nebraska, he strongly considered Nebraska.
He wanted to come here. I think he wanted to come here. He never got the invite to do a visit, though. And then they had McCord. That was the McCord time.
I mean,
they met with Cam Ward.
They did meet with Cam Ward. They met with that Baylor quarterback, the little guy.
Blake Chapin.
God, good poll, Sean. Good poll. Blake Chapin. We know those. We definitely know. I mean, you knew Leavitt was interested because he'd take our calls all the time. I mean, I almost cussed her. Hell, he took our call after the fact. Like, I just wished him well. He took the call.
It's funny. Satterfield went around and did all that legwork. And then he gets back to Lincoln and they're hosting McCord. And then Raiola decides he wants to come to Nebraska.
Yep.
Changed the whole.
Satterfield did good legwork. Give him credit.
He went all around the country.
Yep. I mean, they went on an impressive run of interviews with quarterbacks. Really impressive. Yeah. Then Dylan.
Well, that'd be fun. Two trips to Vegas in a year. I'd take that.
I'll take that. Take that.
Fun. All right. How about wrestling? Bo Bassett, one of the top high school players or wrestlers in the country. Wrestlers in the country, decommitted from Iowa, and he's down in Nebraska, Penn State, Oklahoma State. The typical three you would pencil in.
Yeah, I'd say two are typical. I wouldn't say Nebraska belongs in the typical category, but Nebraska's kind of moving into that realm again. Bo Bassett was the top-ranked wrestler in the class of 2026. For some reason, decommitted from Iowa, I think it was a week ago Sunday, and Nebraska is in deep on this. According to a source talked to yesterday, in deep is what he said, and decision within the next 2 weeks. Well, no.
Manning's got it rolling.
In deep. I don't know what that exactly means, but it's got to involve some money, right?
But Manning has made it pretty clear he will not pay anybody more. Like, he's got a level that they pay with their NIL.
He's got a returning national champ.
And then Brock Hardy. And then obviously
Brock Hardy,
Ferrari.
Yeah. He's not going to pay more than those guys.
Right. And he's really clear about that. But I think that's helped build the culture of the program the way he wants.
Yep.
Where we've seen it go backwards for like Iowa, who was they paid a lot of money for some guys, and it didn't work last year for them.
Nebraska passed Iowa at both the NCAAs and the Big Ten meet. They raced past Iowa, which is something I never thought I'd say.
And they were a play away from winning in a duel. And I think they were missing somebody when they dueled. Like, they didn't have their full. But Iowa, they had the lead on Iowa in the duel. Then Iowa had to win like everything at the end, and they did.
Now, when I say that, I'm going back to the 90s. I mean, I covered it in I covered Nebraska wrestling in the 90s when Iowa was just flexing all over the place. And I thought at that point, when they had Dan Gable, when Iowa had Dan Gable as the coach, I just never thought Nebraska. I never dreamed Nebraska would pass Iowa. They passed them, not for good, but at least for.
And I was over there this week with my daughter's swim practices at Devaney, and Mark Manning's camps are going on. And
burgeoning.
1,600 wrestlers are a part of his camps this year.
So it looks like wrestling season.
And it's not like for football camp, it's a day camp. You come in and you come out. Wrestling camp, you live here. So if you walk over to like Harper Schramm Smith in that area, there's a little bridge that takes you to the Devaney Center. I mean, you would think it's like the Olympic Village. There's just athletes and wrestlers hanging out everywhere.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, it's
I'm glad you saw it.
It's a throwback. I mean, you don't see youth sports camps like that anymore, where you stay the night. Like, I mean, that's what I grew up doing. Going to, I'll say, I went to Creighton camp in Omaha a lot, where we'd stay all night, all week in the dorms. And
yeah, I went to. How about this one, Dana College? Not even. Is it even open anymore? Dana College?
No,
I went to Dana
overnight.
Yeah, it was overnight. It was absolutely overnight. And it was Coach Brusnahan, the Creighton assistant, that led the camp. Do you remember that name at all?
He hit on my grandma.
He hit on your grandma. Not surprised. I know it. I knew him. I mean, but
he knew my I'm like when we came to camp, I'm like, oh, Grandma, how do you know him?
He led the camp. He was a great coach. I got in trouble at that camp because I kicked a ball and it hit a coach in the head. It hit Frank Spenceri in the head, and I had to sit out for a while.
No, I used to go to Creighton camp overnight when Altman was the coach. I went to
Creighton camp when Altman was the coach.
I went to Rick Johnson's 1 year too when he was the coach as well. But I can remember how much. Dana Altman would walk around and do the bed checks like on everyone's room.
Oh yeah,
and I was a part of a couple kids. Like, you didn't realize how rough like the area around the campus in North Omaha is, and some kids snuck off to go to like the McDonald's on like 30th and Cumming.
Yeah. It's still there.
Yeah. And they got their, I mean, now you realize like having like 6th grade kids sneak off campus to go to McDonald's on 30th and Cumming.
Hard transition or easy transition from your playing career to the NBA draft.
Yeah, let's get it.
To the NBA draft, where Kalkbrenner Ryan of Creighton got drafted last night.
2nd round. John Tanji from Omaha Central played at Wisconsin. He was drafted in the 2nd round.
Not surprised by either of those.
Hunter Salas not drafted.
Hunter Salas, Sean, shot Millard North graduate, great player, but he shot 27% from the 3-point line this past season at Wake. 27%. You can't. I don't know. You just can't draft that.
Chucky Hepburn not drafted, but he
Not
got
surprised
signed
by
to a
that.
two-way and then obviously
Wait a second. What?
he's on like he agreed with a team already, like a two-way deal.
I feel more confident that ultimately Salas will be on an NBA team ahead of Hepburn.
Bryce Williams not drafted.
Not surprised, but I think he'll make it. I'm bullish. I've been bullish on that since the season ended. I watch a lot of NBA, as you know. I can slot Bryce Williams in spots where he could play. He can play in that league. The question, the thing he'll have to, there's some questions. You have to shoot the three ball better. And how will he be when the defense gets really rough? Because that league is rough now. It's hand-to-hand combat on defense sometimes, literally. But you've watched him a lot. You're qualified in this discussion, Sean. You go to every game and watch it closely. I do the same. I don't go to every game, but I watch him on TV, which is better. And I've watched Bryce, and I'm convinced he can play in the league. I'm thoroughly convinced he can play in that league. Not be a star, but play.
There are two teams that had multiple top 5 picks, Duke and Rutgers.
Duke had 3 guys in the top 10.
But how about Dylan Harper 2, Ace Bailey 5, which that was the projection on those guys.
That's projection
all along.
Right.
But it really put, if you're Nebraska, the one of the only games all year those two guys decided to play at that level was in Lincoln.
You might be able to help me with this discussion. It's a surface level discussion a little bit. And I didn't watch Rutgers throughout the season very much, except when they played Nebraska. How do you miss the NCAA tournament with 2 top 5 picks?
Well, they sat out a lot of games. They were hurt. They battled some. When they came to Lincoln, those guys showed up.
Yeah, they did.
And I forget who it was, but somebody laid kind of a cheap shot foul on Ace Bailey from Nebraska.
And that whipped him into a fury.
And they got angry. And it was kind of like, oh, hell no. We ain't losing these chumps.
Right.
And they were unbelievable.
Yeah, they were really good.
I mean,
game.
there was
both of them.
It was watching those guys, Nebraska didn't play that bad.
No, they didn't.
And those guys were at an elite NBA level. And
I thought especially Harper.
Yeah,
especially Harper. Harper can score at all 3 levels. What I really love about Harper is how smooth he is going to the rim. He really gets to the rim well. Now, will he continue to do that in the NBA? My guess is yes. He's 6'6", and he's just smooth.
Derek Queen goes 13. By the way, the first international player taken in terms of a non-NCAA college player was all the way to number 12 this year. So we had been seeing a trend where the international guys were going above the Americans a lot in the NBA, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But a lot of collegiate players drafted over the foreigners this year. Derek Queen, 13, probably not surprised by that. We saw him in PBA, and he looked the part. I don't want to butcher the name, but the guard from Illinois went 20th.
Kasparas
from Lithuania.
Yeah. And then right behind him was Will Riley.
So they had back-to-back 20. And this is what Fred's going against.
I know.
Jace Richardson from Michigan State goes 25th.
To Orlando.
Danny Wolf from Michigan goes 27th to Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
So even the center from Penn State,
good player,
Yannick, he goes 30th. I mean, the Big Ten's a beast.
It is.
When you look at the draft picks in this league.
It is. But Penn State got that kid. I wonder how Penn State got that kid.
I'm looking here any other notable guys that we saw this year in the Big Ten, but a number of guys that were in PBA this year that we watched play against Nebraska went very, very high in the draft.
Fred's got his work cut out in terms of he's not on a level playing field. And I believe we all have to recognize that. I mean, I've been pretty critical of Fred, but more, as you know, more critical of what I deem to be really low expectations. And unfortunately, I think now, okay, Sean, I'm just going to say it. You just have to lower your expectations.
Look,
am I wrong?
They need to get in the NCAA tournament. They need to win one game. I mean, that
you just can't, you can't ask.
No one's saying they're a Sweet 16 program.
We can't ask them to be. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. 3 years ago, I would say, why can't Nebraska be a Sweet 16 team? That's when I got mad at that. I'd get angry at people who say, Sipple, come on. No, not come on. Tell me why they can't be. Well, now you can tell me why they can't be. They can't. They can compete to a certain extent, but you can't really be critical of them if they can't top these teams that can pay much more. They can pay much more money.
They can compete in groups 20 to 40, but in that top 20,
yeah,
you're talking about another level of money.
Right. And it's not that they can't upset somebody, but it's always going to be an upset, pretty much, you know. It's always going to be them having to upset people. Listen, I shouldn't talk in absolutes because sports, it's hard to talk in absolutes a lot of the time. But what you're dealing with is kind of a perennial underdog.
Well, they beat Indiana 3 times in 1 year. And that was an Indiana team that was, you know, full of high dollar.
Sure.
And Tominaga went off.
Right.
I mean,
it's great.
That's what you need. I mean, like it happens. They beat Illinois this year.
Right.
They were a couple plays away from beating Michigan. They had Michigan beat.
That's going to continue to happen, by the way. They're going to knock teams off, but that's not really what it's about. It's not just knocking teams off. You would like for Nebraska to compete for a Big Ten championship.
You don't want to be a 9, 10, 11 seed in the NCAA tournament.
All the time, annually. It's with Nebraska, it's never, they're an NCAA team. It's always, no, they're a bubble team. We'll see. I think that's where it's got to stay. And all I'm telling you, Sean, is I can't be too critical of that being the case.
Like when they played Baylor, even as an 11-6 game, I think that was.
Oh, God, it was a mismatch.
But I'm like, they got a chance. They got to freaking destroy. I mean, Baylor then destroyed.
Mismatch.
They destroyed Creighton the next game.
Right, mismatch. I was there. I was in San Antonio for that game. Mismatch. So, but now that's different discussion. I mean,
all right.
Well, I hate it, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Full show today. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Sean.
All right. Well, have a good weekend. I'm off to Kansas City and swimming. And are you?
I'm writing.
You're writing.
Probably. I was thinking about writing a rev share thing, but we're gonna wait.
No one wants to talk yet.
I'll want to write some hardcore football from Holgerson, where he talks about quarterbacks and offensive line.
All right. Well, log on, check us out at HuskerOnline.com. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan.